Hello and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast. You may be surprised to see someone quite young and good looking as much as Joe isn't in the hot seat today. He's next to me as a guest. So I've passed it on and we're starting off as we mean to go on. Obviously we know the host is to my right, but he's not the host today. How do you feel, Joe?
It's good, yeah. A little reshuffled. Paul Gorse dropped out last minute today. We brought you in, and I feel like Endo dropped back to centre back. Comparing myself to Endo there is nice. But yeah, I've got. You haven't done the intro properly. I'll forgive you for that, but I'll keep an eye on you throughout. But yeah, I've got something to say. I gave a mate a shout out on Monday's pod. A mate of mine, Fingers Kenny, big Liverpool fan, and he brought out a single, Deep. It's called. It's on Spotify. It's great. But another friend of mine was a little bit jealous that I'd given Fingers a shout out and not him. So Glenn, if you're listening, sorry about that. And Steve, if you ever find a chicken, mate, hold them tight. That's all I'll tell you.
Well, that's some go. He's already took over as being presenter again. He started giving shout outs. I might have to start charging for my own shout outs. But now we're joined by Theo Squires. Theo, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. I don't have any shout outs to make. I'm just here, ready to get into the pod.
Give your mum a shout out if you want.
She won't be watching.
No.
Lizzie's working. She's got a uni assignment due on Monday, so she's busy rattling that out.
Fair enough.
We've already hit a clanger in the comments as well. We've been waiting for Doyle to leave the pub. No, Ian Doyle today is sunning himself somewhere in St Helens. But before we get started, to get the best out of your NordVPN discount, make sure you go to NordVPN/BloodRed. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan. And there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And the link is in the podcast description below. Obviously, with our sponsors, they always help keep the show going.
Joe.
Yeah,
I know
it wasn't that smooth. Sorry about that, Nord. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link gives you 4 months extra on the 2-year plan.
I think I just said that.
Yeah, just doing it again, just because I don't want the guys at Nord to be upset when they hear you stumbling over it.
This must be like Curtis Jones coming in when the likes of Soboslai and McAllister and Gravenberch have been playing well. Like, do I play it forward? Do I play it backward? I'm not sure. I think I might be getting tugged off at half time. Anyway.
What's going on? Never let this happen again.
Theo, you had the press conference today, and obviously it all kicked off with Mohamed Salah and the comments from Arne Slot. You were sat in position. What did you make of that?
It's just stating the obvious, really, wasn't he? Of course, every single club in the world football is going to want Mohamed Salah. We know Saudi Arabia want him in the Pro League and have wanted him in the Pro League for, 2-3 years now. And he's also said Liverpool want to keep him. It's just nice to hear that on record, that Liverpool do want to keep him. They haven't given up trying to keep him. Obviously, the saga's going on and on and on now. Wait and see if it gets resolved anytime soon. But yeah, nothing to get too concerned about, because everything this week about Salah has just been stating the obvious.
And Joe, there's been the comments from the Saudi sports minister saying he ticks all the boxes, and there's obviously that. It's almost a charm offensive now, isn't it, for the final 6 months?
It's funny with Saudi, because I thought maybe naively that they'd sort of started pulling back a little bit, like we'd seen with other leagues that have sort of come and gone, Russia and then China. We saw them have like these big splurges, didn't we? And then they pull back on it a little bit. And I thought that, but then the last few days have been quite interesting, haven't they? The 75 million they've offered for Mitoma.
That was 90, wasn't it?
Was it? Yeah.
The second one would have been 90.
Yeah.
And then Duran for 7 million euros. Ridiculous fees.
They're obviously going back quite aggressively, and I think that was Saudi perhaps setting their stall out a little bit to say, yeah, we still want the big stars. So I just don't see why Salah would go to Saudi at this point in his career. I mean,
he's sort of hinted at that himself, didn't he?
You would like to think that Liverpool would be sitting down with him and saying, look, we're not going to be able to meet that sort of price in terms of your wages, because I'm sure they can pay him more. It's going to be tax-free as well, isn't it, of course? But Liverpool will be able to fulfill your ambition if you want to challenge for big prizes. And surely Salah doesn't want to be out of sight, out of mind over in Saudi. I just don't think that that's the right move for him at this point in his career. So you've got to hope that Liverpool are pushing that agenda towards him.
I think he might have considered it more, say, the second half of last season, if that had carried on into this year, where he's had the injuries at the AFCON, he's not been at his best. He's thinking, maybe I am on the decline here, now it's time to take the money. But he's in the Ballon d'Or conversation now. He's the clear favourite. He's the leading goal scorer in the Premier League. He's got the most assists in the Premier League. He's the best player in the Premier League at the moment. And while he's not got those levels on the charts in the Champions League, he's still playing really well for a team that are favourites to win the Champions League. And it's the faith he's got in himself, the confidence he's got in himself. It could be a case of go out at a high and go to Saudi. But when you've got this level now and you've hit your top level, he's going to have the feeling that he can do it for another 2-3 years. Just look at the state of him. After every game, the condition, it's gym selfie.
Yeah.
Always showing off that six pack. He is making sure everyone knows how hard he is working to be in that condition this year. He's not wanting to walk away anytime soon.
I mean, he's having his best season, I think, since his first one. And I would argue that it could even be better because Liverpool are better. And I know they reached the Champions League that year, didn't they? But they probably stand a better chance of winning more things. And they did that year. So
that year was turning them into contenders.
Yeah.
Now they're the favourites.
Yeah.
It's a good point that Theo made where it's finally good to hear Slot say, he is our player and we want to keep him. Because for so long of the conversation, it has been, he's going here, is he going there, is he even going to stay? And it just sort of wrestles the conversation back to, he is a Liverpool player and we want to keep him, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, but I think they've been, Sloth certainly in his press conferences and his public appearances has been pretty forthright about Liverpool want to keep all three of them. You know, and I suppose then Salah's been quite forthright that he wants to stay. It's just obviously trying to meet his price. I saw that Rami, I said to Theo earlier, saw that Rami, his agent, is certainly down in London today. So I've been doing some mental gymnastics to work out whether he's there talking. Liverpool got offices in London. They're playing in Bournemouth tomorrow. Anyway, but it's yeah, I think Liverpool have set their stall out. They've said all along they want to keep him. He's said all along he wants to stay. I just wonder whether they can make those figures work. But I think they will, and I think it'll get towards the summer, and eventually something will give. Because I can't see, you know, whether he goes to like a Juve or a Barcelona or a PSG. Don't really see that. And then otherwise it's a choice between Liverpool and Saudi, and I can't see Salah going for the money when we know how sort of ambitious he is as an athlete. And that's fair.
He wants to be up there with Messi and Ronaldo, doesn't he? And we saw them
Yeah.
in European football well into mid-late 30s. Salah can do the same. What I found interesting is if we think back to 2-3 years ago with the last extension, that one almost came out of nowhere. I remember Rami had done the little tweet, didn't he? Everyone thought, oh, this is going to be, he's off. And then we did some digging. It's like, oh no, it's just part of the big reveal. They've actually had this pretty much resolved for a few months now. So what it seems to be in public could be quite different to what it is behind the scenes, because they will have met a few times. They can have an idea of what each party is offering here. There is a way to meet in the middle. But when you're waiting for that resolution, it always feels a bit more nervous.
And don't forget, Rami said at the time, I think he did that study, didn't he? Was it the Harvard study?
Yeah.
Where he basically said he didn't think it was
often.
going to happen, and then it did. So, yeah, I think these things probably don't look like they're going to happen until they do, if that makes sense.
It's almost funny with the way you look at this exodus to Saudi Arabia, Theo, where you think it's got so much promise, and obviously the money aspects that are different kettle of fish in terms of what the Premier League and other European countries have to offer. But it's almost the case where you've seen the players who've made that transition over, and there's not been many success stories, or maybe ones where you go, look, he's doing well over there, or they're trying to make it a big league, but it's still struggling just to break through that ceiling, isn't it? So that might be another reason why the appeal might not be there for Salah.
Depends how he looks at it, because he's an Arabic footballer. He might be quite happy to go back to Saudi Arabia at some point in his career and be that poster boy with his own people. But he's dreamt growing up of winning the Champions League and winning the Premier League since he's come to Liverpool, winning the Ballon d'Or. I know he said in interviews he's not focused on the Ballon d'Or, and this year is the first one he's focusing on the Premier League more than the Champions League. But he'd still happily win all three of them. It's just what happens with Saudi. Like, they're obviously having to go to this new market now. Neymar didn't work out. Ronaldo's 39 now, will be 40 I think this year. So it's going to be difficult for them to get the next stars over there, and it's then picking that right moment. Like we're seeing some of the players they're bringing over. Matoma's not Mohamed Salah, is he? If they'd got, they have got Duran. That's not a Mohamed Salah. They're looking for the younger players, so they are able to have their peak years over there. But it's still not going to give the same pull of having Mohamed Salah in that league. But Salah is in that market of he chooses. He is one of the best players in the world. He chooses when he goes to Saudi Arabia, even if he doesn't sign a new contract with Liverpool. If he wants to still keep winning Champions Leagues or league titles, he could go to a PSG. He could go to a top European club. But it's just what he fancies doing. And then who is actually in that conversation? The fact that at the moment it is he wants Liverpool. Liverpool want him. It's really the only thing we need to talk about, because it's only when that doesn't look like happening, other teams can properly put their hands up and go, yeah, we want to try and make this happen.
Joe, there's a good question here from Michael Lord, and before I get into it, make sure you do leave a comment down below so you can get involved in the conversation and put any of your thoughts, feelings, or even vent to us.
Vent at Steve.
Yeah, I'll take it on board. But Joe Michael says, do you think one of the bargaining chips Liverpool have over Salah is Mo's form for the Ballon d'Or? And it, still playing that top league football for the calendar year might get him the votes.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely it. I think for Salah, as I said, he's motivated as an athlete to be the absolute best on the planet, isn't he? He's never made any secret of that. And I think if you go to Saudi Arabia, in terms of those big awards, certainly for the time being, you're out of sight, out of mind. And I can't really understand why John Duran would be willing to go there in his peak years, because if he wants to progress as a footballer, I don't think you're going to do that.
It's not even his peak years, he's still only 20, isn't he?
So
Nunez goes, he's someone you'd think would have taken him as a replacement potentially. That's the sort of model you look at.
I just don't think it makes sense for him. Maybe the money and the lifestyle and you know, the fact that they could sell him as a sort of Arabic star will tell for him. But surely Liverpool have the bigger chips to play with. If you go there, you're not going to win the Ballon d'Or. It's just not going to happen unless Egypt do something extraordinary at a major tournament. It's just not going to happen. So if you want to win the Champions League, if you want to win the Premier League, they're the biggest prizes in football. So I would be stunned if Salah isn't prioritising them over prioritising money, because it's not. I don't have. I can never take this. It's life-changing money. It's not life-changing for them. You know, their lives are great as it is, aren't they? And they will never want for anything. Their children won't want for anything. Their grandchildren won't want for anything. They changed their whole family, and fair play to them, but they changed the whole family to a whole new social status throughout their career by earning the money that they do. So going to Saudi, I don't see that. If you care about sporting prizes, then I don't see that.
Our colleague Paul Gorse did do a piece, I think it was September, wasn't it, after the United game, where it is what Salah's feeling about it all, and he pointed to Sadio Mane in terms of he doesn't really want to go to Saudi Arabia at this point, and he got the feel that it's still going to be the case now, because how the season looked like it could be for him in September, it has exceeded that already, just at the halfway point. So he's only going to go to Saudi Arabia if there's not another offer on the table here. Just wait and see, because even Mane, it's not hit the heights as he's getting 4 or 5 goals a season. He's not at that level Mohamed Salah still is now.
And there was onto the rest of the contract questions. There's another question here where it says, with the current situation and the 3 contracts, does it leave the potential of growing issues should things go sideways? Let's say Arsenal close the gap and then you've got Salah, Van Dijk or Trent have a minor injury, and with no future secured, does this impact their availability?
What, for Liverpool?
Yeah.
If they're injured, they're not available anyway.
Does it impact sort of the contract situation in general, where if things do go badly for Liverpool and it does become a bit like the peaks and troughs and it could go either way, does it almost become a hindrance? Where do you press through an injury when you know there's a lucrative contract there?
Well, you'd still want them as part of your team anyway. It's only if they get like an ACL injury and they're out for a year. But even then, we've seen Virgil van Dijk come back from that before. You know how good Mohamed Salah is, how good Trent Alexander-Arnold is. You can't say if Trent does his ACL now and Real Madrid are going to, okay, we're just going to leave it for a year if he's still available on a Bosman transfer. Granted, he might have to do like a reduction on wages or something, but then there's all those bonuses in there as well. I think it's a bit more to it than just saying, oh, if he gets injured, that's him on the sidelines for a year and then someone comes back in. These are 3 of the best players in the world in their position. If Liverpool can keep them, they'll want to keep them. And it's that gamble both sides, isn't it? If it drags out, those injuries can happen. But this is what we're seeing. It's unprecedented. Usually you get to the last 18 months of a contract, you get a bit nervy going, this is when you sign an extension. For Liverpool to get to this stage with 3 of them and think at least 2 of them are going to stay, that's just unprecedented.
And Joe, with the 3 contracts, Arne Slot spoke today, didn't he? He spoke about that they are in not constant talks, but they do talk about the future.
He did say he said that Richard Hughes. He said he speaks to them less than Richard Hughes, and didn't he say that he was speaking every day? I think he said something along those lines. So I suppose that is hinting that they are in constant talks with them. Sorry, what was your question?
No, it's a good point you make, because it raises the question: what are these conversations having, and what? Because it's like me talking to you every day, saying, "So about my future and what happens next." Surely at some point,
God, we wonder that, would we? I think It's difficult to say, isn't it? I mean, I'd love to be on a fly on the wall in contract negotiations, and I think there's an element of like laziness, isn't it, in the sense that we all just think it's a case of like offer a number and they say yes or no and then up that bid. But I think there's a lot more legal stuff that will go into it. They obviously have to draw up a contract, bonuses, sponsorship deals, rights, all these sorts of different things go into it, don't they? I'm sure that there'll be length of contract that will be certainly coming into Van Dijk and Salah. The thinking for them, wouldn't surprise me if Van Dijk maybe is wants set 4 years maybe, and Liverpool want to give 2. That, and then that will be a big difference. So there's also these different things that go into it. So I think it's very, very complicated, and it could be that they've agreed on a base wage but can't agree on bonuses, or they've agreed on a base wage but can't agree on length of contract. So there could be so many things going into it, and I think it would be very, very complicated with big players like that and with big money. But I suppose the frustration is that the longer it drags on, the harder it becomes to find the compromise, I guess. So yeah, it's frustrating, and it's frustrating that we have to sit in every pod and he has to sit in every press conference and talk about it. But it's obviously a looming issue, isn't it?
What I find interesting is those talks they're having. Arne Slot doesn't have the power that Jurgen Klopp had. He's head coach. While he can say who he wants to keep, he's not going to be able to really throw himself into those negotiations and make it happen.
I wonder how much he strengthened his hand though this year. Do you think
he probably has it to an extent, but it's not the same as Michael Edwards thinks Jordan Henderson should go. Klopp thinks he doesn't. Right, here's a new long-term contract. And you think a lot of players do normally just leave it to the agent. So if they're the ones doing the numbers, what are they talking about themselves with Richard Hughes, with Arne Slot? It's interesting that Slot came out and said that he has spoken to him about the future, because that at least leads you to assume he knows what Salah would favour doing, he knows what Van Dijk would favour doing, and he knows what Trent would favour doing. And obviously we know what 2 of them would favour doing because they've said it publicly. One of them hasn't, but it's not been a distraction on the pitch. He's not been fazed by it at all. So the fact that they are having those conversations, it sort of puts more light on what is going to happen here, because it's so many different parties, isn't it? You can talk to your head coach, you can talk to the sporting director, but then you've got your agents involved. They know all the little inner clauses and everything, whereas you've just got...
And they've got money to earn out of it as well.
They've got the money to earn out of it as well. Whereas Van Dijk, Salah, the priority for them will be more the longevity of it. They'll want 2-3 years, have the look after themselves for these rest of their peak years, going for the biggest honours, rather than squabbling over an extra 20 grand. Whereas with Trent, it's obviously very different because he is coming into those peak years. He knows if he goes, he's got a massive signing on fee on offer on a Real Madrid. So these different things that come into consideration. It's just quite fascinating. It'll be interesting once it's all resolved to see how it really unfolded. If there's another Harvard study or something where they're Rami revealing all.
Yeah, I wonder as well, those conversations, how I don't think they'll be quite as emotional as fans sort of think they will be, in terms of like if someone was like leaving your work, you don't beg them to stay, do you? You sort of go, fair play, good luck in the future. And I think there'll probably be an element of that. I think I can imagine the manager saying, look, I'd love you to stay, but it's your life, it's your choice. But if you do stay, I'm sure I'd be having conversations with Trent about the ambitions that Liverpool would have, but maybe they don't speak outright whether he's going to stay or not until they have more of until Richard Hughes and his agent have come to something. So I don't know. I don't necessarily think it would be a case of all his teammates going, come on, stay put.
There is an element of that.
Probably
like
be a little
in the
bit.
media and stuff.
Yeah, there'll probably be a little
Jude
bit.
in his ear as well over in Spain.
Yeah, and they'll probably be. I'm sure they would be respectful of whatever their friends and their colleagues want to do with their lives. And fans don't have that connection, do they, to be able to...
What's unique in it is all of them are in that same situation at one point in their lives. So they look at it completely different to how everyone else is, because they have been in that situation. They know what it's like when there's the speculation. They know what it's like when multiple sides want to assign you, or when you're anxious about a contract expiry. It is so different when you're in that situation, and it is a job rather than like a passion, a sport that you just follow.
I'm reading the comments there, and someone's put 2 of the blood red crew I can tolerate. So can tolerate. So I'm really fascinated to know which 2.
Yeah. Depends how far like the team goes. Because you got Kiefer and you got.
Are you throwing Kiefer into that? Yeah.
Like, can't really throw me into. I'm just a stand-in, aren't I, for today?
Could be.
Was he not just talking about the 3 of us on today?
Yeah,
I can't see the comments, so I don't know. I have to look over to produce.
You're going to have to clarify that.
Yeah, so do you buy into the sense, especially after Canate spoke about his future recently, it's sort of like a hint where it says maybe some other players are holding back to see what these three get and see how important am I compared to these when my performances are so good? Because it sort of resonates with what what Slot said, where he said it's not just those three players who are out of the contract, there's the other players who have futures as well.
Well, I've written this before. If you're an agent, you don't want your client to sign early. You want those three to be resolved, and then there's that knock-on effect. Like if Ibrahim Konate signed his new contract last summer, he's not getting anywhere near as much as he could demand this summer when Salah, Van Dijk, or whatever are resolved. Like for starters, he wasn't in a very good place playing-wise last year, but now he's one of the first names on the team sheet. He's in the form of his Liverpool career. But there is those ramifications from those big digits. Like we know how much Mohamed Salah is on, highest earner in Liverpool's history. And apart from Diogo Jota, they haven't really had to negotiate with any of the big hitters since he signed that extension. But now when you've got all of them coming to the table, of course that's going to have that knock-on effect across the entire squad for what they're worth, what they can demand. And then also you've got all the bonuses from winning the Champions League, winning a Premier League. I think Dave Powell pointed out in a piece this week, the reason the wage bill went up, even though so many big hitters left, is because they qualified for the Champions League. They didn't the year before. So you've got all those bonuses from doing that. There's so much that goes into these contracts rather than the basic player earning 150,000 a week or whatever.
And Northred's clarified his comments. He said, sorry to the presenter, I couldn't see you there, mate. So 3 decent blood red.
Good man.
So it's all ends happy. What a Friday.
Yeah,
what a Friday.
It's all ended. It means that we've got this new 2-camera setup, haven't we? So I see. I understand.
Moving up in the world.
Thank you very much, Northred.
We'll move away from contracts and go on to the press conference in general. There's an element of good injury news, Joe, in terms of Jota, Nunes and Gomez back in training. But I suppose the big question is, what will their involvement be? I suppose Gomez is probably further ahead than the other two.
Yeah, I wouldn't see them risking anyone. First of all, Nunes was an illness, wasn't it? So I'm sure if he's back in training, he'll be fine, and he will play some part probably from the bench tomorrow. But Jota, I don't see the point in risking him. He's had so many fitness issues, and Liverpool have got so many key fixtures coming up. I know this one is a big one, but if he's just come back into training today, he might make the bench. Slot tends to, he doesn't have that thing, does he, with Klopp used to want to come through a couple of training sessions. Slot tends to put them back in a bit quicker. But I don't see the point in risking Jota too much. But it's good news. I mean, Liverpool have, touch wood, been lucky with injuries this year, haven't they? In the sense that they've not been as lucky, I think, as some people think, but they haven't had a load out at one time, and they've tended to get people back at the right time. So it's good. I mean, that means Curtis Jones is the only person injured unless there's any new injuries in training over the next couple of days. So yeah, it's good. Again, I don't see any of them coming into the first team, into the first 11, tomorrow.
Well, I think he's got a great goal in the Carabao Cup as well a few weeks earlier.
Yeah, it's not really what I'd have made the narrative that Darwin Núñez has got something in for Bournemouth, but yeah, it'll be...
So about Uruguayans and smaller teams.
But he's a good option off the bench. We saw what he could do against Brentford a couple of weeks ago, and Bournemouth are a very different animal from when Núñez has scored against him in the past. Like even the 3-0 at the start of the season where he scores that absolute worldie there, no one thinks they were going to come and do what they've done this year, where it's 12 unbeaten at the moment. Mm-hmm. They're in ridiculous form, and it's even more incredible when you look at the injuries they do have. They're essentially playing without a centre forward and putting the quick wingers in there, and they've been brilliant. There's so many players in that squad. You go, wouldn't mind them as part of yours. But yeah, Liverpool have got a strong squad themselves. I think Slot said they've got over 20 players available. If you're saying Núñez is back in contention, Jota's back in contention, Gomez is back in contention, some senior players are getting left out here. So it'll just be getting that best combination on the pitch. I agree with Joe. I know we'll get to the teams in a bit. I can't see Darwin starting, even if he is fully over the illness. But he's always a great option to bring off the bench. And if Bournemouth is going to be as tough as we think it is, he could have a big say off the bench too.
And before we go into Bournemouth, Joe, obviously there's a midweek game, a rare loss for Slot himself. And
I thought we were going to completely forget PSV.
No, try to. But no, it was a big day in most respects for the players' personal level, wasn't obviously. God,
players, yeah.
Feel bad for Maranello in a sense, but I suppose the key thing to come out of that was the likes of James McConnell and Jayden Danns. And I suppose the question is now, who does go out on loan? Because you were saying before about Tyler Morton as well.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I thought it was a really entertaining game on Wednesday night, and I kind of like those games where they change a lot of players and the pressure's off because you get to see different side of the team, don't you? So thought it was a good game. I thought James McConnell was absolutely superb. And I know Slot said afterwards that he'd maybe changed his mind on sending him out on loan. He might stay put. But he did say today he'll see what happens in the next couple of days.
I felt he backtracked on it a little bit today, didn't he?
It's one of them, isn't it? I suppose if Jones gets back fit and they've got a lot of midfielders, they might think, let him go and play a bit of football and build on what he did the other night, because other than the FA Cup, there's not going to be many games from now on where he will get into the team, unless there's an injury crisis. So I can see that. And Dan's, again, I get, it depends on Jota, doesn't it? But if the strikers are fit, then Dan's, I think, seeing him go and play regular games, that would be good for him. I think he's got something about him, Dan's. And I think James McConnell's got something about him. But I really like Tyler Morton, and I think, he's not going to... I very much doubt he's going to become a first-team player at Liverpool regularly enough. And he spoke quite honestly about his need to move on. But I think, I tweeted the other night, I think there should be a queue of clubs around the block for him, because I think he's got a lot of ability. I really like the way he passes. He zips it forward really quickly. He's quite aggressive. He's ambitious. He works hard. I could see him going and playing for... I think if a Brentford picked him up or a West Ham, they'd have a good player there.
Yeah, it's linked with West Ham this week, isn't it?
I suppose for a player like that, Liverpool will have a big price tag on him, and I think they should. He's a young player that they know has got very good standards, but clubs will just look at him and think, well, he's a Liverpool reserve. We're not paying...
Wasn't 20 million touted in the summer with Bayer Leverkusen, was it?
Yeah, and I think they will probably struggle to get that, but there's a reason why I think Liverpool will want so much for him. And I think
it's how the Saudi market scuppers everything, doesn't it? Because you'd say Matoma and Duran aren't worth what the fees they would go for, they are going for. But if a player goes for that sort of fee, you go, well, why can't we get that for a Tyler Morton? And Liverpool have done that a few times in the past. And sometimes it's worked, sometimes it's not. Like the number of times Nat Phillips has stayed put because they've not been able to get 20, 15, 12. That's gone down and down and down. But they always look at the market trends, and sometimes it pays off.
I just don't think you want to play. He's 22, isn't he, Morton? You don't want him really now, I think, is the time to sell. Because if he starts getting to 23, 24, that price will naturally drop anyway, won't it? And then...
It's already been an awkward year for him with barely playing.
And I think just... Hopefully everyone can come to a compromise, because I think he needs to crack on, and he's a good footballer.
I think that probably has the knock on for McConnell as well. Say Morton goes to West Ham, 20 million deadline day. You're probably more inclined to keep McConnell just to make that extra midfield number. But at the same time,
he's been on the bench a fair bit, hasn't he, not this year?
But the last month or so, Slot seems to be trusting the fringe players that little bit more. Like he's seen more from Endo, he's seen more from Elliott. We've seen Chiesa, I'm assuming, is going to be next on your list. There's a player we're going to mention. But yeah, there
he
are.
Wasn't. He wasn't.
But yeah, that's how they can spin these players, can't they? Keep them going. Like McConnell might not play that much in the second half of the season, but sometimes you do need that body there, and that's why they've had Morton for this first half.
But that's why that game was so crucial. You mentioned those two players there. I mean, and throw in Kelleher as well, who hasn't had a great deal of football recently, but we know with Alisson picking up injuries how important he can be for Liverpool. Bradley as well, I thought played very well. So it's important, isn't it, for those to get minutes. Thought Chiesa was great, and I really like his attitude. I think he's got a really good can-do
His interview
attitude.
afterwards
His
as well,
interview
was
afterwards,
great.
he worked really hard. I think he was a tad greedy at times, but there's probably an element of like, I want to do something here. I want to show what I'm capable of, and I think that will have done his Liverpool career no end of good.
And let's not forget with Chiesa as well, he isn't some fringe forward that's been signed. He was the golden boy of Italian football. He's won the Euros. They are all gutted that he's not played more because he is their star player. So he didn't come to Liverpool to be sixth choice forward. He'll think he can be in that starting three. And obviously very hard for him at the moment because of how well Gakpo's been playing on that left-hand side, how Salah's playing on the right-hand side. But if there are changes in the summer, he could be forcing his way up that pecking order. He's just got to keep doing what he's doing. Come on. When he doesn't start, get goals, get assists, get shots on goal, win penalties. Every time he plays, he makes something happen. And it's like when Nunes first came into that Liverpool team, he's doing all the right things in the final third. It's not resulting in a goal every single time, but he's an exciting player. And because he's got that attitude, because he's so happy to be there, you see how wildly he celebrates, always got a smile on his face. You're starting to see the glimpse now. He's ready to be a Liverpool player now.
When you win big titles, I think those types of players inevitably have their say, don't they? There's a reason why Origi was a legend at Liverpool, and that's because he stuck around. He always worked at it, and he always came in and had his say. And I think back to like when I remember Arsenal when titles, Wiltord would come off
Yeah.
the bench and he was never a starter for them. He could never quite break into the team, but he scored crucial goals. And I think for Endo, he can have that role in the next several months because his attitude is right. And if your attitude is right, it takes you a long way. And Slot talked about that a lot in his press conference today, didn't he? Just thought he was great the other night. He took a little bit of a knock, didn't he, at one point when he won the penalty, and he was sort of limping round. I thought, oh no, he's gonna go off here, and it all starts again for him. But he managed to get through it and crack on, which I thought was important.
There must be a big weight lifted off his shoulders when you think about it, because he's come.
Definitely.
He probably felt that. Well, he did fall way down the pecking order at Juventus, didn't he? It must have been somewhat of a body blow to be told by your new manager that you're surplus to requirements. And I suppose
That's what you had, didn't you?
maybe. I suppose there's maybe an element as well where that injury problem and having such a stagnant first sort of time at Liverpool, where he's trying to do too much at times, is sort of not grown frustrated with him, but where you see him, where he's like, he cuts inside and like, oh, go on, there's an element of a space there for a professional footballer to with it. Why can't you shoot? And he just cuts back. But I think with that first 90 minutes, there'll be a weight lifted off his shoulders, and he'll think, do you know what, I can't be a Liverpool player. And I think we might see a lot more positive stuff from where not shooting the ball so much.
There was a game earlier this season where was he like not in the squad, and we all expected him to be?
A couple of times.
Yeah.
Tottenham was one, wasn't it? And then would it have been West Ham? They had the two
Essentially,
trips
yeah.
to London, and he was left at home.
Yeah,
And like,
that was it, yeah.
here we go again. Or he's ill, because he was ill like 3-4 times in the space of 5-6 weeks. But Liverpool's patience has paid off with him, evidently. Like, Liverpool supporters probably look at him, and there was those doubts of, he's going to be an injury-prone player because he did his ACL a couple of years ago. But he did play a lot for Juventus last year, and he was first choice for them. He's been unlucky because the new manager and Motta didn't want him, and he didn't get a proper pre-season. Then he's gone to a new league late in the window, having to play catch-up, gets an injury, struggles with the intensity. We saw that with Gravenberch last year, but Gravenberch you saw a lot more of in that first season. It's like it's easy to write that narrative of Chiesa, and we think of Italian players and past Liverpool, they've not been very good, it's not worked out for him, but there's something there, isn't there? You think that he is going to break that narrative. We can't write him off because he's been a bit unlucky, but when he plays, he makes something happen.
I thought earlier this season that when it was West Ham, wasn't it? When I think he was left at home to just get fit, carry on getting fit.
Yeah, he was training at home.
Yeah, and I remember Slot saying that and thinking, that doesn't sound right. That it's still saying a player 6 months after signing him is not fit enough and he can stay and work on his fitness. But and I thought maybe that would signify that someone would come in and he'd go out on loan in January and it wouldn't quite
It's
work
the last
out,
game of the calendar year as well, wasn't it? So the transfer window's just about to open. It all seemed to be pointing towards he's going there.
But he's certainly proven me wrong, and he's battled through it, and I hope it's the start of some good luck for him and some good progress, because I really like him as a player. I just think he's got the right attitude, like Endo. He's got that attitude, come in, make his mark on the game, be positive, whether it's for 5 minutes or whether it's for 55 minutes. He always comes in and tries to make a bit of an impact.
When you mention Origi, we're getting to the months now where you remember the games.
Yeah.
These are what define the seasons. Goals and assists, whatever. Like Shaqiri coming on against Barcelona, Gini Wijnaldum getting the brace, Origi getting that brace. Big moments are coming for Liverpool in the Premier League and the Champions League. Chiesa could write his name into Liverpool folklore here.
Definitely.
I think what you mentioned about when he went down with the penalty, just finishing off on Chiesa, when he did go down, it must have been like a mentality sort of shift for him, because especially that cameo against Southampton, there were flashes of quality, but then just seeing like a little shrug and he's going down. It was just like a bit frustrating. And I think with that kick, he might have thought in his head, obviously, he had hurt, and then he might have took his time to like walk it off. But I've sort of got to swallow this and step forward on it.
And it was good, wasn't it? He'd shown a bit of skill on the right, beat his man. Was kind of unlucky that he won it back, but he didn't give up on it and just made something happen through sheer effort. And Elliott was a bit unlucky, wasn't he? Because he then had bagged. I don't think anyone was getting to that, because if you look at the goalkeeper and the defender, they carried on defending it, and still Elliott scored. But,
such a good strike.
But it was just good play from it and Chiesa, and again, I know I've said it about 5, 10, 15 times in the last 5 minutes, but his attitude is just right, and that takes you a long way, I think.
I think something we've not spoken about yet is Chiesa's attitude. I think it's
it's
really good.
Well, what do you think? But now moving on to the game of the weekend, that was what it was described to Iraola as. What have you made of his Bournemouth this season? Obviously, they've earned a lot of praise and they've had good wins along the way, and especially that away win at Newcastle. That long trip for all the fans. didn't think they would go there and turn them over, but they pulled them apart in the end, didn't they?
Well, Newcastle seemed like the informed team in the Premier League at that point. It looked like it was going to be one-way traffic for them with Isaac, who's been one of the strikers of the season. So for Bournemouth to do that, and we've already mentioned their injuries, what they've been doing at the moment is incredible. And there are a number of players in that squad you'd like to have in your own team, like Kirkus, the left-back who scored the 4th goal. He's been linked with Liverpool. He looks really good. The 3 forwards in Kluivert, Atara, Semenyo, I think they've all been linked with Liverpool at one point or another, but they're such trickery, so skillful, got goals in them, they've got assists in them. It's just those sorts of players that you could see in a Liverpool team. It's whether they can make that step up. Like Liverpool are in a different place from 5 years ago when you would be that next step, but credit to them. And they've got a very good manager in Areola. You're looking forward to when he does get that next step up. Like, 'cause he could easily be the next Man City manager. He could be the next Arsenal manager. He is one of the leading ones. Same as Thomas Frank at Brentford.
It's the next logical step for him, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Joe, just on Bournemouth, they're one of them teams, aren't they? Those frustrating away games where you got Brentford and was it Forest the other week, and even before, 16 goals in the last 4 games.
I think Ghosty was saying, wasn't he, that it's funny, the Premier League, it feels like 10. There's like 10 away games that you look at now and go, that's a tough one, and this is certainly one of them. I think the managers of Bournemouth's fantastic. I think, like you say, with Frank, they are, to me, the 2 outstanding young, I don't know how young they are, but relatively young managers in the Premier League. Love Thomas Frank. Just think he's brilliant. And just a quick mention for if anyone hasn't seen the little inside Bournemouth training video where they're talking about Liverpool and
shout out all day.
Yeah, shout out Thomas Frank.
A rival one as well.
Shout out Thomas Frank.
No behind the scenes for us.
Yeah, no, I really like that. But Andoni, I think, is really good. One of the things I think is impressive about Bournemouth is they seem to have signed a lot of players, and credit to Richard Hughes for this, on the same level. So they can rotate, they can bring people in, and they seem to maintain a certain level of ability. And
they seem to improve together as well.
Yeah,
don't
they work well as a team, don't they? And the manager, I just think he's a really good tactician. I think he's got a good charisma. Like, I'm not saying he's like a Klopp sort of character, but he's got good charisma. You can see the players get behind him, and I think he's made them a really, really dangerous unit. So I think it's going to be really tough. And it's one of those games. I mean, I think we've said this on like 3 pods recently with the Forest one. I think Doyley even went as far as saying that if Liverpool beat Forest, and this is like Doyley putting himself well out there, Liverpool beat Forest, they'd win the title.
And then he predicted 1-1.
Yeah. But then I look at this game and almost think the same. I think if Liverpool win tomorrow, it goes to 9 points with a game in hand.
Arsenal having City, yeah.
Arsenal having City. And that, to me, just feels massive. It feels really, really big.
And then you've got City, Everton a couple of weeks afterwards. Yeah. This is a big run of away games. And it's weird at the moment, you'd say City's probably the one you might feel more confident about. But Liverpool have been in such good form this season until the last couple of away games against Spurs and PSV. Slot hadn't lost away from home for over a year. So I'm sure I'll be looking to set off another run going forward. And Bournemouth's a great place to start because they have looked like a different animal so far. It'd be interesting to see what they really are at the end of the season. If they are pushing for a 5th Champions League place, or if it's just Conference League, Europa League. But there's a few good teams there with good managers who you're just waiting for that next step. It'd be interesting if, say, Jurgen Klopp had stayed for another couple of years. These are the managers you'd be looking at to replace him. Because let's be honest, Arne Slot came from nowhere pretty much in terms of Liverpool thinking. But you don't have to worry about the next manager now because Arne Slot's so young himself and he's doing such an amazing job. But it's made that Premier League a bit more competitive, a bit more exciting. The fact that Spurs can fall away, United can fall away, City can have a poor season. We're seeing all these new teams in contention and they have got things to actually compete for rather than just squabbling over finishing 10th.
And Joe, we'll go into predictions now, I suppose. The back 4 and goalkeeper, all replenished now, aren't they? It's almost been a masterstroke to give them the rest, even with...
Yeah, so you're going to have Alisson, aren't you? Trent, Konate, Van Dijk, and it looks like Robertson, doesn't it? Because Tsimikas played the full 90 the other night. So that kind of hints at where Liverpool are going. Probably, personally, think Tsimikas has done really well recently, and I might have him in there over Robertson, but I think it's an either or, really.
Could be an argument to put Robertson centre half after that 45, 50-minute cameo, Theo. No.
They conceded 3 goals. That one.
Oh, yeah.
Got left in his backside as well, didn't he, for one of the goals? I'd lean towards Tsimikas. Like, you can argue that Robertson coming off early means he's going to get that nod, but it also could be the treatment that Gakpo got. As you've played the last game, we'll take you off early to protect you from that in terms of combined minutes. I just think Tsimikas is looking like a more natural fit in the team at the moment. Maybe he's not as strong defensively, but he's got a bit more pace on him. You know, Bournemouth are going to be targeting him. They're going to be down that wing with their quick, pacey wingers. Semenyo is someone who's been linked with Liverpool, and he's a threat on that side. I just feel a bit more confident when Tsimikas is in the team at the moment. Not sure about you.
Yeah, slightly. I don't know. Because I don't think Robertson's been anywhere near as bad as has been made out this season. Liverpool can't be as good as they've been with him being in poor form, but yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I thought Tsimikas done really well recently, but he seems to trust Robertson just a little bit more, doesn't he?
There's almost a thing against PSV as well, where every time over the top between that left back, left centre back, that was Robertson's side, wasn't it? Yeah. So I probably would side with Tsimikas.
But that's normal, isn't it, to target your left back playing centre back, isn't it? I think I'd have been surprised if they'd not targeted him.
When you're going from a 6'4", 6'5" centre back in Van Dijk to Robertson, who's not even 6 foot, is he? It's an easy player to target.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily think that was like a Robertson specifically. It was just because he was playing out of position.
And midfield,
probably picks itself. Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai.
How much of a boost do you think that midweek break was for Gravenberch?
For all 3 of them, I mean, Gravenberch is obviously someone that played so much football. I think of every player, this speaks volumes to his form this season, doesn't it? And his importance. That I think he's the one player that we all look at and go, "Oh, please don't pick up an injury." So definitely really good to give him a rest. Szoboszlai, I mean, the absolute engine on that man is so impressive. But obviously he comes off the pitch sometimes looking like he's ran himself absolutely ragged. So
sweating more because of the long hair and the headband.
He definitely could do with a breather, and obviously McAllister. Again, McAllister, another guy who probably doesn't get enough credit for his work rate, puts himself about, doesn't he? Gets into challenges, and again, sometimes you grimace, don't you, when you see him going in for challenges and the knocks he takes. So all 3 of them have been massive part of how good Liverpool have been, and I think if they're fit tomorrow, that's great, because I think Liverpool needs to get on the front foot and control the game early doors.
In the last 6 weeks, we've seen McAllister have a couple of games off through suspension. Szoboszlai, I think it was suspension and illness, but they both look so much better coming back from having that break. So hopefully having the week off has helped for Gravenberch. We see Van Dijk's Instagram where he says he's like 99% recovered from the weekend. If you're getting Gravenberch at 99% recovered, having been taken off early against Ipswich when he was playing very, very well, we could be seeing that extra second win for him here. Because he has had a great first half of the season. Past 6 weeks, there have been games where he's not been at his absolute best. But yeah, it always helps when you can give him that little bit of a rest.
There has been talk of his goal output as well, and it was good to see him get on the score sheet against Ipswich and even play a bit. No, Szoboszlai. Yeah. But no, he had that chance as well where Gakpo was on hand to score. So it makes you think what that week off or that game off and the goal will do for his confidence going into it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be nice to see him get a few more goals. I don't necessarily think he needs to, because Liverpool have got 3 forwards scoring at a good rate, but it certainly adds a bit of an extra dimension, doesn't it, to Liverpool's play? So yeah, I think Szoboszlai's been absolutely outstanding all year. There was a bit of criticism early season, but his work rate is phenomenal, and I think the way Liverpool play high up the pitch, you need someone who's able to put themselves about. He wins so many headers, and I think he started to add a bit of an X factor in the final third, which kind of came about in December, didn't it? I suppose the Tottenham game, I think, was a game where you started to see him really affect things there. So, yeah, I think he's been brilliant this season. And
Tottenham opened eyes, but so did not playing against United. When he wasn't there, you realised, oh, this is what he does. And I think he's got a lot more credit in the bank in the past 6 weeks off the back of, firstly, that Spurs game, but then having a couple of games where Liverpool were drawing and they were lacking that energy, that work rate.
I suppose the front three stays the same, Theo, but is it a case now with Diaz and that number 9?
I don't want to see him there long term, but he would be for this one because, like Joe said earlier, I don't really want to take any risks with Jota. And with Nunes being ill, you don't really want to throw him straight back in. And Gakpo came off early, I think, against PSV, came off early against Ipswich. He shouldn't not be able to start this one. You just think that there should be some attacking changes from Liverpool going into the summer. Like, not sure which of the 6 will move on or anything, but it feels like there could be a more natural number 9 there. Like, at times, Diaz has been brilliant. Leverkusen and Spurs come to mind, but there have also been games where he's not been involved. He's just not in position. He's getting bullied. Like, I don't think he had a shot or a key pass last week against Ipswich, where strugglers, granted they're deep, but they're one of those teams that you'd like to think he could make an impact against. And he was particularly poor against Forest from memory.
Yeah.
He's just been a bit inconsistent as a number 9 for me. But having said that, he could score the winner tomorrow and all is forgiven.
But is there a case for Nunes, Joe? Obviously, he did travel to Eindhoven, and that illness just sort of sprung up overnight.
It's one of them, isn't it? You don't know
And that Bournemouth back two as well have been phenomenal this season.
Yeah, you don't know what sort of illness he's had. You know, if it's a heavy flu or a vomiting thing, then
Gone are the days of Klopp saying a player's got diarrhea.
Yeah. I mean, if it's something like that, then it takes a few days, doesn't it? You've got a kid in nursery, it takes a few days to recover your strength, doesn't it?
I haven't quite played 90 minutes of football after that.
Yeah. So I don't, but I think it does say a lot about Liverpool's centre forward position that really I'd be picking the same front 3, but I'm not fully convinced about having Diaz in there, and I think they've got to go out and do something in the summer. I mean, I know we haven't talked transfers much, and I don't know whether there's any listener questions that you wanted to get to before we finish off. I did send you a couple, Steve. I hope that you've asked them.
I've gone through them.
You haven't named them. Paul Chapman asked. We'd give him a shout out.
Sorry, Paul. I forgot to copy and paste the email
but
address.
That's another shout out from you.
Use the position, don't you?
There's one from Matthew Jackson as well
Matthew
that was
Jackson,
thrown in there, so thanks for your questions.
I think transfers wise, I think centre forward is the big area where, dependent on the contracts, but the big area Liverpool need to go out and do something in, because if they got a proper centre forward, then it just adds a whole new dimension. But I do think that's easier said than done for Liverpool because of the way they play, and if Salah stays, then the reliance on him to score goals. They're not a team that has a Harry Kane style centre forward, are they? They have to have someone that is able to do a bit of both. But I think that's an area they need.
It makes the next few months really interesting, because I'm not sure if you've seen the snippets from the Football Focus interview with Slot from Lineker, and Slot was basically promising transfers in the summer. And it's like, well, you've not done anything in your first window. You've not done any in the January one. But what are Liverpool going to do? There are a few positions in that squad where you could look like they want to try and strengthen. But if they are going to improve on it, this is a chance for the players to state their claim, like a Harvey Elliott, Nunes. Are you going to be part of this squad in the next season, or is that someone to improve on? And after a few windows of not really doing much, it seems like we could actually get a reasonably busy summer. That'd be quite good.
It just has to be, doesn't it? It just has to be. And I know people in the comments and people annoyed with FSG and Liverpool's sort of reluctant style with transfers can be frustrating, but it also has served them well. It's that double-edged sword, but this summer has to be big. I think you look at it and think, I've said it before, if the 3 players leave, that makes it into just the most frenzied, frantic summer. It's the sort of thing that's the sort of thing surely that FSG always want to avoid. They don't want Liverpool going around acting like Chelsea. So if those 3 leave, then they've got a big issue. If they stay, or certainly 2 of them stay, then they're probably going to need a backup right back, left back. Do they look there? Do you have the sort of inevitable churn there if Tsimikas or Robertson leave, or certainly you're replacing one of them? Midfield, they still need strength. Forward, we've talked about. And then do you have others? Does Luis Diaz leave? There was a few rumours last year.
Endo.
Yeah,
you break it down.
Exactly,
there's a few.
Yeah, exactly. After you've had fringe players for a while, there's that inevitable churn where they start to think about their career and move on. And if they do, Liverpool have got holes to fill. So, like, how busy do they want to be, and how busy can they be? They're going to have to be really, really busy, and just doesn't strike me as the FSG style. And I feel like for a club who's very careful at planning, they've left themselves a bit short.
And if you lose a Salah, then that makes your negotiations all the more harder, because clubs will charge you that much more because they know you desperately need that forward to replace him. But then players will ask for that bit more as well, because they know you've got that big hole in your wage bill and you're that little bit more desperate to get a replacement.
And the pressure is on. If Salah leaves and they buy a forward player, the pressure is on them, because all you will get is pundits saying for the next year or so, they could have kept Salah, they could have given him a new contract, and it is a really, really tough situation.
It's something they avoided with Mane when they got Diaz 6 months early. They avoided it with Firmino because they got Nunes and Gakpo. They're not doing that if Salah goes now.
You could argue they were never going to do that with Salah because of his importance, but yeah, I think another centre back as well. It's another area, isn't it?
I was trying to say transfers for the transfer deadline day special that you have lined up on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to figure out when we're going to record that, but that's another funny.
Yeah, that's what I was holding off for, but no. Score predictions.
Head says 2-2, heart says 3-2. I think if Liverpool get about it early, push Bournemouth back, play sort of on the halfway line like they did against Brentford, then they can win the game. I think if they go into it like they did against Newcastle, they could be in trouble. Newcastle got into it early, didn't they? They got their tails up. The good thing about Bournemouth is the vitality's small, isn't it? So you don't have that crowd factor that Newcastle had. What do you think?
They need to play as well as they did defensively against Brentford. And this is just because I've watched that Thomas Frank video and I've seen how tormented they were by it. But if Bournemouth are allowed to play their own game, you fear for it that it could be a Bournemouth win, it could be a draw. I suppose we should be a bit more confident as it's blood red. So I'll go 2-1 Liverpool, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're a bit disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I always like about these games is they're going to come and play a little bit, aren't they? You know, they're not going to put 10 men behind the ball and just sit, and that gives Liverpool space to operate. So, yeah, let's say 3-2 Liverpool and B. Our cans of Carabao here on the Blood Red podcast.
We don't have Ian Doyle, so we're allowed to be positive.
No, I'm pessimistic, so I'm probably going to say Liverpool will go behind, but that would be 1-1 or 2-1 Liverpool.
That's not pessimistic.
Well, I mean, if we'll go behind, so they'll go behind, so it'll be a slow start.
Well, if they go behind, still win, I don't care.
Yeah, that's it. But no, that wraps up our Friday edition of the Blood Red podcast. Thank you all for your questions. If you were watching live, or if you're watching on the replays, please leave a like, a comment, a star, or...
Not a star, 5 stars.
5 stars if you're listening online, or if you're listening...
4 stars minimum. 4 stars minimum is fair.
We'll settle for 5 if you're listening on your favoured podcast platform, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And thank you, NordVPN. I hope I haven't scuppered any deals. And thank you for watching. Please join us in the future, possibly on Monday.
Can I just quickly say, if you do want to, hopefully we'll be fine. I'll be hosting Monday. But if you do want to send a question in for Monday's pod, joe.rimmer@reachplc.com. Happy to put the questions to the panel, which I'm not sure who it will be because Ghosty's working early.
Late, aren't you?
I'm going to work late. You're in, aren't you, in the daytime?
Probably be you, me and Doyley then, won't it?
Yeah, it probably will be. You might get the call, Steve, if you could.
I've been the super sub, Stephen Killen. I've been joined by Theo Squires and slightly old look at me, Joe Rimmer. Thank you for joining us. Catch you soon.